iPhone SE 2022 Review, cheapest iPhone, one of its most powerful. The iPhone SE is a funny old phone. With a design and display that you could generously call aged. But the latest Apple processor and 5G connectivity, this is a very old-fashioned phone in some respects but a supremely modern device in others. The same inconsistencies were there to be found in the, almost identical, 2020 iPhone SE, but while Apple's budget offering has remained static, the rest of the market has moved on. So while the previous SE was a phone I could recommend, with some serious caveats, this 2022 edition is a tougher sell. To be blunt, it serves one audience and one audience only. Those who absolutely will not under any circumstances buy an Android device, but can't afford the iPhone 12 mini or any of the other more expensive Apple phones. Let me be blunt for a second. The design of the iPhone SE dates all the way back to 2014. That's when Apple released the iPhone 6, which looks fundamentally the same as this year's SE. That design was tweaked slightly for 2017's iPhone 8, but since then has been essentially static through both the 2020 SE and the 2022 model. That means you still get the home button below the screen, and no notch above it, but it equally means you'll have to live with a huge black bezel above and below said screen. There are no other phones on the market that look like this, and I don't mean that as a compliment. Still, there are upsides to the design. For one, it's small. The SE is just 5.45 inches tall, and weighs a mere 144 grams. It's compact, comfortable, and easy to hold and use with one hand. Still, it's worth noting that it isn't Apple's smallest phone. Both the iPhone 12 mini and 13 mini are smaller and lighter, despite packing larger displays, so those are worth looking at if size is your main concern. If the reused design holds back the iPhone SE, that's nowhere more true than when it comes to the display. This is one of the worst displays in any modern smartphone. It's tiny, at 4.7 inches. It uses older LCD tech, rather than a superior OLED panel. It's low resolution, not even full HD. It's dim and thus hard to use in bright sunlight, and it caps at a 60 Hz refresh rate. You could spend half as much and still find an Android phone that beats the SE on just about every one of those specs. The effect is practical, as well as aesthetic. The SE can barely fit modern apps on its screen. Some Instagram posts can't display in their entirety. Cookie pop-ups block even more of websites than they're designed to, and you better hope you don't need to type anything. The keyboard takes up half the screen, frequently blocking the text entry fields you're trying to use. The small screen is also a knock against the common argument that the SE is a great phone for older users, who may be reluctant to learn a new swipe-based interface. After all, a small screen means smaller text, and an even more cramped display if you opt to increase text size, making this a questionable choice for anyone with visual accessibility needs. Now we're getting to the good stuff. The main way that the iPhone SE stands out from the mid-range competition is that it offers the absolute fastest chip you'll find in any phone right now. Apple has included its A15 Bionic chip here, the same chipset you'll find across the iPhone 13 range, and according to rumor, a chip it will even use again for the iPhone 14. That predictably means the iPhone SE is powerful, and genuinely approaching flagship level, only held back by lower levels of RAM included here. Small phones mean small batteries, and just 2 years ago I listed poor battery life as one of my chief criticisms of the 2020 iPhone SE. To Apple's credit, a lot seems to have changed in those 2 years. The company officially lists a 2-hour improvement in battery life for the SE, but in my experience the upgrade is more substantial. The last model barely lasted a day, but this year's iteration will last through 1 day and even make it to the end of a second if you're a light user. That's important because charging is less impressive. Apple lists support for up to 20W charging speeds over a wired Lightning connection, but remember that the company no longer ships a charger with its phones. There are good and bad elements to the iPhone SE's camera setup, but it all boils down to this. If you're happy with a single camera lens that can take good shots in daytime, it will suffice. But if you want multiple lenses to choose from, or reliable nighttime photography, it won't deliver. Apple has included only a single rear camera here, a 12MP, f1.8 that is, in terms of hardware, identical to the 2020 model. There's no ultrawide or telephoto option, but in fairness, Most mid-range phones offer underwhelming secondary lenses, and I've long been an advocate for affordable phones focusing their efforts on strong primary cameras as Apple has done here. The camera upgrades here come courtesy of the A15 Bionic chip, with smartphone photography now increasingly reliant on computational factors. The problem is that Apple has decided to artificially limit the A15's functionality in this phone, most notably in entirely omitting a night mode option, even though there's no obvious technical reason it couldn't be supported here. On the front, there's a single selfie camera, a 7MP shooter at an aperture of f2.2. Again, this isn't a camera to rely on at night, but there's not much to complain about in selfies otherwise. There may be no night mode, but there is a portrait option, and this delivers well with the exception of a few stray hairs tending to be blurred along with the background. Like most iPhones, this is also a capable video device. It can record at up to 4K at 60 FPS, with impressive stabilization and strong quality. There is another omission here though, with the cinematic mode that debuted on the iPhone 13 allowing video with varying depth of field and blur effects, not found at all here. Software is another strength. The iPhone SE ships with iOS 15, the latest version of Apple's mobile operating system. It's likely to be supported for years to come too. Even the original iPhone SE, which launched back in 2016, can still update to iOS 15. If this model sees similar support, it could be updated not only to iOS 16 later this year, but all the way through to iOS 21 6 years from now. No Android phone can rival that longevity, though in fairness they're catching up. Google tends to support its mid-range Pixel S series phones for several years, and Samsung has promised at least 4 Android version updates for its iPhone SE competitor, the Galaxy A53. The iPhone SE is out now worldwide, and you can grab it from Apple itself, or major electronics retailers including Amazon. In the UK it's available on all the major networks, including Vodafone, O2, 3, and EE. In the US it's a similar story, available on T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T. It's available in 3 storage tiers, 64GB, $429 per £419 per €529, 128GB, $479 per £469 per €579, 256GB, $579 per £569 per €699. At that price the phone's immediate competition is the Samsung Galaxy A53, which is similarly priced at £399 per $449 per €449. Like the SE, this includes long-term software support, water resistance, and 5G, but has the advantage of a much more modern design and display, though its processor isn't quite as powerful. If you're in the US then the $449 Pixel 5a is also a compelling rival, though this model never went on sale worldwide. Still, anyone in the UK, Europe, Asia, or elsewhere is likely to have a huge variety of impressive mid-range Android phones to choose from, most of which will best the iPhone SE on value, so long as you don't mind Android. The iPhone SE offers plenty of power, but I'm not sure why. It's the main area the last SE didn't need an upgrade. Few will want to use all that performance to drive bleeding-edge mobile games on such a dinky screen, or use it for demanding multitasking. Even the camera can't take full advantage, with Apple arbitrarily restricting access to features like night mode and cinematic mode to drive demand for its more expensive options.